My daughter's wedding had ended just 2 days earlier. I was only going back to the hotel to pick up the medical bag she had accidentally left behind, but before I could leave, the hotel manager quietly said, "Sir, there's something you need to see." A few moments later, I was sitting in a dark security room, staring at a CCTV screen. On that screen was my brand new son-in-law, the man who had married my daughter just 2 days before, holding another woman in his arms. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. I didn't yell, I didn't confront him, I didn't say a single word, because in that moment, I made a decision that would change his life forever. Before we begin, I have a quick question for you. Where are you watching this story from, and what time is it there right now? I always love seeing how far my voice reaches around the world. My name is Leonard. If you walked into the glass and steel monolith on 42nd Street in Manhattan today, you'd see a sprawling corporate headquarters with hundreds of employees tracking logistics fleets across 48 states. You'd see a multi-billion-dollar empire called Apex Logistics. But if you look closely at the black and white photograph hanging behind the reception desk, you'll see where it actually started. A single, rusted 1978 delivery truck parked in a gravel lot in Queens with a 27-year-old version of me sitting behind the wheel, my hands covered in engine grease and my back aching from a 16-hour shift. I built this life from nothing. I didn't have a wealthy father to hand me a small loan, and I didn't have a safety net. I had grit, a relentless work ethic, and eventually, I had Emma. When my wife passed away 22 years ago, Emma became my entire world. I remember sitting by her bedside when she was just a little girl, holding her hand while trying to balance corporate tax ledgers on my lap. I made a solemn promise to myself back then. I would build a kingdom for her. Every contract I signed, every late-night flight I took to secure a shipping route, and every grueling boardroom battle I fought wasn't for my own ego. It was to ensure that Emma would never know the crushing anxiety of financial insecurity that had plagued my own youth. As I crossed my 65th birthday, the physical toll of 40 years of nonstop hustle began to catch up with me. My doctors were gently warning me about my blood pressure, and my own body was telling me it was time to step back, to enjoy the quiet life, and to watch my daughter build her own family. I was ready to pass the torch. I wanted a partner for Emma, someone who would cherish her for her brilliant mind and her kind heart, and someone I could trust to run Apex Logistics with the same integrity that I had poured into its foundation. That was when Ryan entered our lives. He was sharp, well-dressed, and carried himself with an effortless Ivy League confidence that immediately impressed my daughter. When Emma introduced him to me at a quiet dinner in Brooklyn, I looked into his eyes and thought I saw a younger version of myself, hungry, ambitious, and deeply devoted to the woman sitting next to him. For the first time in decades, I let my guard down. I allowed myself to believe that my prayers had been answered, that I could finally retire knowing my daughter and my life's work were in safe hands. I opened my home, my heart, and my company to him without a second thought. I was blinded by a father's love, completely unaware that I was inviting a venomous snake directly into our sanctuary. Once Ryan was in our lives, I didn't just open the door for him. I gave him a golden elevator straight to the top. I ignored the seasoned executives on my board who gently suggested that a 30-year-old with only mid-level management experience wasn't ready for the upper echelons of Apex Logistics. I was the founder. My word was law. Within 6 months of him dating Emma, I created a custom pipeline to fast-track him through our corporate hierarchy. I placed him directly in the chief operating officer's chair, bypassing men and women who had given 20 years of loyal service to my company. I wanted Ryan to feel secure. I wanted him to look at my daughter and know that he could provide a life of absolute luxury for her without ever feeling the sting of financial strain. I set his base salary at an astronomical $350,000 a year. When he casually mentioned over a glass of scotch that his Ivy League student loans were a heavy burden preventing him from putting a down payment on a home, I didn't hesitate. The next morning, I instructed my personal accountant to wire a $150,000 sign-on bonus to his account, wiping his financial slate completely clean. I even handed him the keys to a corporate penthouse overlooking Central Park, telling him with a warm pat on the back, "Take care of my girl, Ryan. That's the only payment I ever want from you." To his credit, Ryan played the part of the grateful, hard-working protege flawlessly. He arrived at the office at 6 a.m., his tailored suits immaculate, his desk buried under market analysis reports. He would call me throughout the day just to check on my health, insisting that I take my blood pressure medication and insisting that I take longer weekends. "You've done enough heavy lifting, Leonard," he'd say, with a charming, respectful smile. God, I swallowed it whole. I thought his ambition was driven by love for my daughter and respect for the empire I had built. The ultimate testament of my trust came on the eve of their wedding. We were sitting in the study of my Hamptons home, the salt air blowing through the open windows, when I handed him a leather-bound folder. Inside was a newly drafted legal clause tied directly into the Apex corporate framework. It guaranteed that on the exact date of his 2-year wedding anniversary with Emma, 35% of the voting equity of Apex Logistics would automatically transfer to his name. It was a massive, unprecedented concession that effectively positioned him as the future face and majority owner of the empire once I fully retired. I still remember the look on his face when he read those papers. His eyes flared with a strange, intense hunger that I foolishly mistook for overwhelming gratitude. He choked back what looked like tears, gripped my hand with a firm, reverent pressure, and said, "Leonard, I swear to you I will protect this family and this company with my life. You will never regret this." I went to sleep that night feeling a profound sense of peace. I had secured my daughter's future, found a brilliant successor, and established a legacy that would outlive my 67-year-old body. The wedding the following evening was a spectacular $200,000 affair at a historic Manhattan venue filled with 500 of New York's elite. As I watched Ryan spin Emma across the dance floor under the crystal chandeliers, her white dress swirling, I smiled through my tears, believing I was witnessing the happiest beginning of their lives. I had no idea that less than 48 hours later, the entire beautiful illusion would crumble into ashes. The wedding was on a Saturday. By Monday evening, the music had faded, the guests had left, and my life was about to be altered forever. Emma had phoned me from their penthouse in a panic. She was packing for their European honeymoon and realized she had accidentally left her emergency medical kit containing her vital daily prescription allergy medication at the Manhattan hotel where the reception had been. I told her to breathe, pouring myself a cup of decaf. "Stay right there, sweetheart," I said. "I'm still in the city finishing up some paperwork. I'll swing by the hotel and grab it for you." When I arrived at the Grand Hotel, the staff recognized me immediately. The venue manager, a quiet man named Thomas, whom I had known through various corporate galas for decades, greeted me warmly. He personally accompanied me up to the private bridal suite to retrieve the small velvet bag. But as we walked back down the plush carpeted service corridor toward the lobby, Thomas stopped. He looked around nervously, his face suddenly turning a pale ash-gray color. "Leonard," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly, "can we step into my office for a moment? There's something from Saturday night that has been weighing heavily on my conscience. I've been debating all day whether to call you." My stomach tightened. An old instinct, the same one that saved me from bad business deals in my youth, screamed that something was terribly wrong. I followed him into the dim wood-paneled security office. Thomas closed the door, locked it, and sat down at his desk, avoiding my eyes.
Without saying a word, he clicked his mouse, bringing up a time-stamped archival recording from Saturday night, right when the wedding reception was reaching its peak. The camera view was from a secluded, dimly lit service hallway just behind the main ballroom, a place where staff took breaks and guests rarely wandered. The screen showed a young man leaning against the wall, a glass of champagne in his hand. It was Ryan. He had loosened his tuxedo tie. A moment later, a woman in a sleek red dress walked into the frame. It wasn't Emma. It was Vanessa, his ex-girlfriend, a woman Ryan had explicitly assured us he had completely cut ties with a year ago. I watched, my breath catching in my throat, as Vanessa walked straight into Ryan's arms. He didn't pull away. Instead, he wrapped his arms tightly around her waist, pulling her against his chest and kissing her passionately. My hands began to shake, the blood rushing to my ears with a deafening roar. But the physical betrayal wasn't even the worst part. Thomas reached over and turned up the audio feed from the hallway's high-definition microphone. Ryan's voice came through the speakers, crystal clear, dripping with a cold, mocking arrogance I had never heard from him before. "Calm down, babe," Ryan chuckled on the tape, stroking Vanessa's hair as she whimpered about him marrying someone else. "Look at me. You think I actually love that boring, naive little girl? Emma is an absolute chore to look at, let alone talk to. This whole thing is business. I've spent 2 years playing the perfect doting boyfriend to her and the humble servant to her old man." Vanessa looked up at him. "But you just married her, Ryan. You're her husband now." Ryan laughed, a sharp, venomous sound that pierced straight through my chest. "For now. Just watch the clock. The old man is 67, and his heart is a ticking time bomb. But even if he doesn't kick the bucket early, the legal contract he signed gives me 35% of the voting equity in Apex Logistics on our 2-year anniversary. I've already spoken to a private asset attorney. The second that equity hits my name, I'm initiating a massive corporate restructuring, draining the primary cash reserves into our offshore shell accounts, and filing for a high-asset divorce. I'll walk away with half the empire, leave Emma with a broken heart and a bankrupt company, and you and I will be set for life in southern France. She's just the key to the vault, babe. That's all she is." The video kept playing, but I couldn't hear the rest. The room spun. The speakers seemed to echo his words over and over. Just the key to the vault, a bankrupt company, a broken heart. I sat there in the dark, staring at the glowing monitor. My 67-year-old heart, which had survived decades of stress, felt like it was physically tearing apart. My innocent, sweet daughter was currently at home, smiling, thinking she had found her soulmate, completely unaware that she had just bound her life to a monster who viewed her as a financial target. I didn't yell. I didn't smash the desk. I closed my eyes, took one long, deep breath, and felt a profound, chilling transformation take place within me. The loving, trusting father-in-law who wanted to retire vanished. In his place stood the ruthless entrepreneur who had fought his way out of the gutters of Queens. Ryan thought he was playing a game with an old, frail man. He had no idea he had just awakened a giant.
I thanked Thomas, grabbed Emma's medical kit, and walked out into the freezing New York air. The Manhattan skyline, with all its glittering lights, suddenly looked like a battlefield. I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, the cold wind biting at my face, wiping away a single bitter tear. That was the last tear I would cry for Ryan. My initial, primal instinct was to drive straight to their penthouse, throw the medical kit in his face, and drag him out into the street by the throat. But 40 years in business teaches you one valuable lesson. Raw anger makes you sloppy. If I confronted him now, it would be my word against his. He would spin a web of lies to Emma, claim it was a moment of weakness, play the victim, and weaponize my daughter's love against me. He might even push her to alienate me entirely, leaving him free to manipulate her behind closed doors. No, a man like Ryan didn't deserve an honorable fight. He deserved an absolute, catastrophic ambush. I looked up at the stars and made a silent vow to my late wife and to my daughter. I will protect our family, and I will destroy this man so completely that he will never be able to hold his head up in this city again. I got into my car and dialed Emma. When she answered, her voice was full of that bright, innocent happiness that Ryan wanted to exploit. "Did you find it, Dad?" she asked. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing my voice to sound perfectly calm, cheerful, and relaxed. "I got it, sweetheart," I said, smiling into the steering wheel. "I'm dropping it off with the doorman now. You two have an amazing time in Paris, okay? Don't worry about a single thing back here. Ryan, you hear me? Take care of my girl." From the background, I heard Ryan's voice yell back, "Always, Leonard, you're the best." Hearing his voice make that promise made my blood run cold, but I didn't let my voice waver. I hung up the phone, and the smile instantly vanished from my face. I pulled over to the side of the road, opened my laptop, and sent an urgent encrypted message to 3 people: my personal corporate attorney, a premier forensic accountant who specialized in Wall Street fraud, and the head of my internal cybersecurity division at Apex Logistics. The message read, "Emergency meeting at my private residence at 2 a.m. Bring your secure laptops. The target is the COO. We are going to war." By the time the clock struck 2, my study was filled with the smell of strong black coffee and the silent tension of a calculated trap being set. I played the CCTV audio for them. I watched their jaws drop, their professional composure cracking as they realized the sheer malice of the man I had placed at the head of my company. "Leonard," my attorney said, adjusting his glasses, "we can fire him tomorrow for gross misconduct based on this." "No," I replied, my voice dangerously quiet. "Firing him just sends him away to find another victim. I don't want him gone. I want him ruined. I want him under the floorboards of the federal penitentiary. Show me how he plans to steal from my company, and we will build the cage around him ourselves." The next 6 weeks were a masterclass in psychological warfare and corporate espionage, and I was the conductor. When Ryan and Emma returned from their honeymoon, I welcomed them back with open arms. I threw a small family dinner, toasted to their long future, and told Ryan directly over the dinner table that I was fast-tracking my retirement plans. I wanted him to feel invincible. A man blinded by his own greed becomes incredibly careless, and that was exactly what I needed. My first move was to give him the bait. I instructed my corporate attorneys to draft a highly complex, official-looking restructuring proposal. I called Ryan into my office on a rainy Tuesday morning and slid the documents across my mahogany desk. "Leonard," I leaned back in my chair and put on my best tired old man voice. "The board is approving a new $45 million offshore logistics expansion fund based out of Ireland. I'm giving you sole, unrestricted signing authority over this project. It's your trial by fire. If you handle this well, I'll hand over the remaining keys to Apex by winter." His eyes practically turned into dollar signs. He tried to hide his smirk, nodding solemnly. "Leonard, I am honored. I won't let you down. I'll manage these funds as if they were my own." "Oh, I know you will," I thought to myself. What Ryan didn't know was that the entire Ireland expansion was a financial mirage. The bank account was an insulated, high-security corporate escrow account monitored 24/7 by federal regulators and our forensic accounting team. Every single penny that moved out of that account required my secondary silent digital approval, but to Ryan's interface, it looked completely autonomous. Within 8 days, the snake began to bite. Our forensic accountant, a sharp woman named Martha, called me into a secure room. "Martha, we have a hit," she said, pointing to her screen. Ryan had initiated the first wave of unauthorized wire transfers. Under the guise of external consulting fees, he transferred a staggering $450,000 from the expansion fund directly into a newly formed shell company registered in Delaware. From there, our cybersecurity net went to work. We tracked the funds as they moved from Delaware straight into a private joint offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The names on that account? Ryan Miller and Vanessa Vance.
He was already building his escape hatch, stealing almost $500,000 of my company's money to fund his future life with his mistress. But I didn't stop there. I wanted a total bulletproof prosecution. I gave our IT division full authorization to mirror Ryan's corporate devices. Every keystroke he made, every text message he sent from his corporate iPhone, and every email he drafted was instantly archived onto an encrypted server in my private study. We watched in real time as he dug his own grave. He began reaching out to our fiercest competitors, holding midnight Zoom calls from his penthouse while my daughter was asleep. He was bargaining with them, offering to sell Apex's proprietary route optimization algorithms, software that cost us millions to develop, alongside our exclusive East Coast client manifest. In exchange, he wanted a multi-million-dollar executive salary at their firm once his divorce with Emma went through. He was writing out the emails, explicitly detailing how he was going to bleed Apex dry from the inside out before the old man even realizes his pulse is stopping.
The emotional toll of those 6 weeks was grueling. Every Sunday, I had to sit across from him at family brunches. I had to watch him pour juice for my daughter, kiss her cheek, and then turn to me with a brilliant, respectful smile to ask how my health was doing. "Make sure you take it easy, Leonard," he'd say smoothly, cutting his steak. "We need you around for a long time." I would look him dead in the eyes, smile warmly, and say, "Oh, don't you worry, Ryan. I'm not going anywhere until I see exactly where everybody lands." He thought I was a foolish, aging dinosaur being led to the slaughter. He had no idea that every piece of data he touched, every dollar he moved, and every text he sent to Vanessa bragging about how he was playing the old billionaire like a violin was being neatly printed out, cataloged, and handed over directly to a specialized white-collar crime task force at the FBI. I had the wire fraud, the grand larceny, and the corporate espionage beautifully packaged. All I needed now was the perfect stage to unwrap it. The stage was set at the Apex Logistics Annual Gala, hosted in a magnificent glass-domed ballroom overlooking the Manhattan skyline. It was the premier event of our corporate calendar. 500 people packed the room, our entire board of directors, Wall Street's top institutional investors, major banking representatives, our most loyal employees, a radiant Emma, and a smug, victorious Ryan. Tonight was the night Ryan believed he was going to be publicly anointed as the undisputed heir to the empire. He spent the evening mingling with the press, drinking expensive champagne, and patting my shoulder as if he already owned the place. At 9 p.m., the lights dimmed for the keynote address. Ryan stepped up onto the stage, the spotlight catching his tailored tuxedo as the audience erupted in applause. He stood behind the podium, flashing his brilliant, practiced smile, and adjusted the microphone. "Good evening, everyone," Ryan began, his voice echoing smoothly through the high-end sound system. 40 years ago, a visionary named Leonard built this company from a single truck. Tonight, as we look to the future, I am honored to announce that we are embarking on a massive, historic expansion that will change the face of logistics forever. I stood at the back of the room, right next to the main AV control booth. I caught the eye of my cybersecurity chief who was sitting at the master terminal. I gave him a single firm nod. "Cut it," I whispered. Instantly, the corporate promotional video playing behind Ryan froze. The screen went completely black. Ryan paused, looking back over his shoulder with a confused laugh. Looks like we have a little technical glitch up here, folks," he joked into the mic. But the screen didn't stay black. A second later, the massive 40-foot display flickered back to life, but it wasn't showing shipping routes. It was showing the crystal-clear, high-definition CCTV footage from the Manhattan Hotel service corridor. The entire ballroom fell into a sudden, suffocating silence. 500 people watched as Ryan appeared on screen, passionately embracing Vanessa. Before Ryan could even process what was happening, his own arrogant voice boomed through the ballroom, echoing off the glass walls. "Look at me. You think I actually love that boring, naive little girl? Emma is an absolute chore to look at. This whole thing is business. The second that equity hits my name, I'm draining the primary cash reserves into our offshore shell accounts. Leave Emma with a broken heart and a bankrupt company." The silence in that room was deafening.
I looked down at the front VIP table. Emma's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes widening in absolute horror as the tears spilled down her cheeks. Ryan's face drained of all color, turning a ghostly, translucent white under the stage lights. "Turn it off! Turn it off right now!" he screamed toward the tech booth, his voice cracking with panic. Instead of turning it off, the screen transitioned to a slideshow of his encrypted emails, his offshore bank routing numbers to the Cayman Islands, and the itemized forensic ledger showing the exact $450,000 he had embezzled from our firm. I walked slowly down the center aisle of the ballroom, every eye in the room turning to me. I stepped onto the stage, taking the microphone right out of his trembling hand. "The only technical glitch tonight, Ryan," I said, my voice deadpan and steady, echoing through the silent hall, "is that I let a parasite like you into my house." Right on cue, the heavy double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. 4 federal agents from the FBI, alongside officers from the NYPD, marched down the aisle. Before Ryan could even step down from the podium, they intercepted him on the stage, pulling his arms behind his back and clicking the steel handcuffs tightly around his wrists. He was formally arrested right there in front of the entire Wall Street press on federal charges of wire fraud, grand larceny, and corporate espionage. As they dragged him away, screaming and begging for mercy, not a single person in that room looked at him. The aftermath was total and swift. Vanessa, realizing the feds were closing in, completely cleaned out their secondary joint account and fled the country, leaving Ryan entirely broke, utterly humiliated, and unable to afford even basic bail. He is currently sitting in a federal holding cell, facing up to 20 years in prison without a dollar to his name. Emma, displaying the incredible strength I always knew she possessed, signed the annulment papers right there at the venue table, wiping his toxic presence out of her life permanently. As the room cleared, I stood at the glass window with Emma, looking out over the city. I wrapped my arm around her shoulder, pulling her close against me. She looked up at me, her eyes clear, her spirit unbroken. "I'm sorry about the company, Dad," she whispered. I smiled, kissing the top of her head. "Don't you ever worry about that, sweetheart. Businesses can always be rebuilt from scratch, but a man's integrity and character, that is something all the money in the world can never buy." Sitting back and watching that monster get dragged out of my own gala in handcuffs wasn't just about saving my company. It was about protecting my daughter and proving that greed will always blind a fool. Ryan thought he could play me because of my age, but he forgot that an empire built on honest sweat can never be stolen by a thief in a tailored suit. Looking back at everything we went through, I have to ask you, do you think I handled this the right way, or would you have confronted him sooner? Let me know in the comments. And if you learned something valuable from my journey today, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to join us daily. Stay safe out there.